What's up, painters? It's time for another exciting installment of painting my dwarf army for Old World. Today I'm batch painting 10 Quarrelers. I changed the purple I'm using for the base colour because the old one was causing me way too many issues with the inconsistency it was creating. This time I used Vampiric Purple Express colour from Vallejo, and I'm much happier with the result. Anyway, enough with the foreplay, let's get painting. The first step is the chainmail. I use plate mail from Army Painter and overbrush it over the chainmail. I only want to hit the raised parts and leave the purple showing in the recesses as the shadow colour. Since the plate mail's already on my palette and I need to swap my water before I use the next colour, I also did the rest of the metal. So that's the weapons and the helmet trim. Doing the helmet trims now means I'll have to be more careful doing the blue on the helmet later, but I think overall it's just quicker to do it now. Once I changed out my water, it was time for the blue. I start with dark sky and block in the helmets and the sleeves. I realised later that I should have done the cloth at the bottom of some of the models, but I missed that during this step and have to come back later and fix it. But if you're following along with this to paint your own dwarfs, do that step now. It's also worth noting that I'm painting the sub-assembled parts along with the bodies. These guys will get fully assembled after the beards are finished before I do the highlighting. Next is Vampire Red. I'm still not happy with how this is covering, but I haven't found another red that I'm happy with yet. Thankfully the red parts on these models are relatively small, so doing multiple layers doesn't take too long. Then it's time for the leather. I use leather brown and block in the boots, belts, gloves, and the hand grip on the banner. Now it's time to block in the beards. This is the main place I get variety into my dwarf units, so I used 5 different beard colours. If you're looking to save time, you can definitely cut that number down to whatever you're feeling comfortable with. You can even get away with just doing one beard colour if you want. It's your army, go with what you're happy with. The beard colours I chose are Desert Yellow for a blonde, Monster Brown for a medium brown, Chaotic Red for a reddish brown, Oak Brown for a dark brown, and Necromancer Cloak for a black. Writing all these colours on the screen would just take up way too much screen space, but all the colours I've used on these models are in the description so you can check them out there if you need to. Next, I block in the faces with Barbarian Flesh. Some of these helmets were a bit of a pain. It was hard to tell where the nose stopped and the nose guard began. I don't really have any advice for how to work it out, I just went with what I felt looked right. Then I used purple tone for a wash over the beards and faces. I put it on my wet palette so it would dilute as I went along. I started with the darker beards while the wash was still undiluted, and as I moved to the lighter beards, I diluted the wash more on the palette. I'm looking for some nice shadows and contrast, but I don't want it to be too dark. Then the beards all got a dry brush. The Desert Yellow got hit with Elven Flesh, Monster Brown got hit with a 50-50 mix of Monster Brown and Elven Flesh, Oak Brown got hit with Monster Brown, then Chaotic Red with Fur Brown, and finally Necromancer Cloak with Uniform Grey. Now it's time to do the eyes. I do these before highlighting the faces because that'll let me fix up the inevitable mistakes. I start with white, before using Necromancer Cloak to dot the pupils. Then I come back in with Barbarian Flesh to tidy up any mistakes from doing the eyes, and any spots where the wash darkened the flesh too much. Then the noses and cheekbones all get a final highlight with Elven Flesh. For the fletching on the crossbow bolts, I block them all in with red to start with, and then pick out different feathers with white and blue just to add a bit of variety. And this is where I went back and did the cloth beneath the armour. This should definitely have been done earlier when I was blocking in the blue. Somehow I missed doing it on all the models. I guess I'm just really good at this painting stuff. For the skin on the drum and the crossbow strings, I use skeleton bone. I'm not sold on this for the crossbow strings, and I'm thinking about redoing these, but I have no idea what colour I should do them. If anyone has any suggestions, I'd love if you drop them in the comments for me. Finally, it's time to do the hammered copper. This hits all the idols and medals in their beards, the belt buckles, and the gears on the crossbows. I also do the helmet trim of the unit champion with the hammered copper just to help him stand out a bit. The reason I didn't do this earlier when I did the other medal was because I knew it would get messed up when I did the dry brushing on the beards, so rather than have to come back and do touch-ups, I pushed it back to now. This is the stage where I glue all the sub-assemblies together. I do this now because that way when I do the highlighting it'll be consistent across the model, and anything the crossbows and other stuff are covering would be in the shadows anyway, so it doesn't need highlighting. I've had issues in the past with inconsistent highlights when I've done the highlighting while things were sub-assembled. Assembling it now just eliminates those problems. Once the models are all together, it's time for highlights. I start with the blue and break out deep blue first. This is focused on the upper portions of the arms, especially on the shoulders. And remember to get their helmet panels too, they're a bit easy to overlook. Then I used Ultramarine Blue to push the highlights further, applying it in the same places as the deep blue but in smaller areas, making sure to leave the deep blue showing. Dragon Red is the first colour for highlighting the reds. The straps on the shoulders get hit from around halfway up, and the red on the chainmail gets hit from around halfway down. There are some parts of the armour that are under the beards and would be in shadows, so I leave these just the vampire red. Then it's pure red to finish the red highlights. Once again, just painting in the smaller areas than the previous step, focusing towards the top on the shoulders and the bottom edges of the armour. The leather gets highlighted with a 50-50 mix of leather brown and elven flesh. For the fingers, you can just run the side of the brush across them and it picks them all out really easily. Also, remember to do the tops of the boots too. I always seem to forget them and have to go back and do them later. Next, I break out purple tone again. I just apply this in select spots, mostly on the medals to build some definition. I focus on the bottom of the crossbows to build up some shadows. Then the medals all get hit all over just to help the designs stand out a bit more. I also apply some watered down wash between the fingers just to help them look a bit more defined. Time to highlight the medals, and for that I use Shinning Silver. I'm just picking out the parts facing towards the top and just trying to build up that definition. One of the nice things about using true metal paints is that since the light reflects off them, you don't need to do too much highlighting. The hammered copper all gets highlighted with greedy gold. Of course, I'm doing all the normal highlighting here, focusing on the parts facing upwards and all that fun stuff, but I'm also making sure to pick out any raised parts on the medals and idols in their beards and on the banner. I'm looking to help build some more contrast here and help the design stand out that much better. And finally, I do a small mountain range on the banner. You can definitely use a transfer or something here, but there weren't any included in the box that I got, so I went with some freehand. I'm thinking about doing a bit more on these banners in the future, maybe adding a night sky with some stars and a moon and that sort of thing. I'm not 100% sure which way I want to take it yet, which is why I've not done it. And we're done. And look, all the stuff I need to do the bases has finally arrived. I've done marble flooring for their bases. I imagine my throng is fighting in the underway to defend their keep. I do plan on doing a video on these bases at some point, but these ones I rushed off camera so they'd be ready for this video. Overall, an hour and 5 minutes per model is pretty good time to get these guys done. As I do more, I expect I'll get them down to under an hour. This time doesn't include doing the bases because 1, I didn't record the bases so I don't have a time for how long it took, and 2, I think everyone has their own basing ideas that they're likely to use, so I think having the time not include the bases is fine. When I do the video for the bases, you can always add the time per base to these guys and that'll give you an accurate idea of how long it takes. Thank you for watching. I hope this has helped with ideas for your own dwarf army. If you want to keep up to date as the rest of my dwarfs are painted, hit the subscribe button. And if you've watched this long, surely you've enjoyed the video, so hit the like button too. Catch you in the next video.